Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I would like to welcome you to this meeting of the Foreign Affairs Committee in association with the Delegation for Relations with the United States, and a warm welcome to the chair of our delegation, Brando Benifei. I am absolutely delighted to welcome Ambassador Andrew Puzder to our committee meeting. Mr. Puzder is the Ambassador of the United States of America to the European Union. We are very, very pleased to have you with us today, and we are looking forward to a constructive discussion. Colleagues, we are meeting at a moment when the international environment is changing in important ways. I don't have to describe this, with challenges such as the illegal war of aggression against Ukraine, Chinese rising global influence, and in general, a growing geopolitical competition. This is why it is particularly timely and very welcome to meet with you, dear Ambassador, early in your mandate to exchange views on the direction of our transatlantic partnership and on the many areas where our cooperation simply matters. The developments in the world, they affect us all, and they require coordination among partners. For that reason, our relationship with the United States remains so fundamental. The Foreign Affairs Committee's recent draft report on EU-US relations confirms this. Although the plenary vote on our report was postponed, it also reminds us that this partnership ought to be continued to evolve in a changing geostrategic environment. It needs to be coordinated and forward-looking, grounded in dialogue, predictability, and mutual respect. Ambassador, when our delegation visited Washington and Richmond, Virginia last July, we gained a clearer sense of both the new administration's foreign policy priorities and its approach towards transatlantic relations. We had a strong emphasis on national economic interests, on rebalancing trade relations, and on reducing strategic dependencies. At the same time, we also heard a clear expectation that Europe should take on greater responsibility for our own security, alongside a continued American commitment to NATO and the importance of a strong transatlantic bond. That general direction is also reflected in the new US national security strategy. So we do not see this as a reason for distance, but as a reflection of a more mature partnership. Europe taking on greater responsibility for its own security and resilience is not only consistent with this expectation, it is in our own strategic interest. We agree with that because a stronger Europe does not weaken our partnership, it strengthens it. At the same time, the European Union continues to stand up for its interests and defend the international rule-based order. This Parliament firmly rejects any attempt to undermine the sovereignty and the territorial integrity of the Kingdom of Denmark, including Greenland. Let me conclude with a short historical reference. Speaking in Strasbourg in 1985, the great US President Ronald Reagan said that the Atlantic Alliance, quotes, proceeded not from transient interests of states, but from shared ideals, and that a strong and unified Europe was, quote, not a rival, but an even stronger partner. I believe that those words still matter. Once again, dear Ambassador, after having visited us in Strasbourg a few weeks ago, we are now delighted to welcome you in person here in Brussels. We very much look forward to hearing your views. You are very, very welcome. And I now give you the floor for an introductory statement of, let's say, 10, 15 minutes, and then we'll have an exchange of views. Welcome.
Okay. Thank you very much. It's an honor and a privilege to be here. Thank you, MEP McAllister, and also my friend out here, Brando Benifei, MEP Benifei. It's an honor. It was when President Trump asked me to be the ambassador to the European Union. I can't tell you how excited I was to accept. I think this is a very important position. I think the European Union holds a very prominent place in our history and our culture, and it is an honor to be here this afternoon with all of you. As ambassador, when I came here, my primary goals, the focus of my attention has been, number one, trying to get our trade agreement finalized, get the EU to approve the agreement, and take the actions set forth in the framework for the trade agreement. So hopefully we're going to see some progress on that over the next few weeks. Is my buddy Bernd Lange in here? I'd have to give him a call out if he is. I don't see him, so.
He chairs the trade committee.
Yes, I know. I was hoping he'd just show up, you know. I always like to see Bernd and talk about his motorcycles. So that's important. I think also in connection with the trade agreement, we have what we refer to as the non-tariff barriers to trade, which are the regulatory framework here in Brussels, which was covered extensively in Professor Draghi's report on competitiveness, which has an impact, obviously, on your economy and our ability to function within that economy. So regulatory issues have been a focus as well. Another area I wanted to focus on was our relationship, our joint relationship and our alignment on China. And I have to say, I was surprised on arriving how aligned we seem to be on the issue of China and some of its economic activities. Another was immigration, and again, I was surprised, and I'm still surprised how we're becoming more aligned on certain aspects of the immigration issue. I think that's something that's not fully appreciated by many of your allies. And I think that as you move forward in that issue, I think it becomes something that needs to be better communicated. And lastly was the war in Ukraine. We all want to see an end to the war in Ukraine. Now, that's not something I've put a lot of focus into, as we have very qualified people negotiating with Ukraine and with Russia to try and bring an end to that war. But that's something I know that we all are aligned on and want to see end quickly. It is in the best interest of the United States that there be an economically prosperous European Union. The national security strategy, which was much maligned, actually has a section on Europe that I can't remember the exact, I mean, this is called the Proposal for European Prosperity. And if you read into it a little bit, into the second paragraph, it says that Europe is strategically and culturally vital to the United States, and that it's a pillar of our economic prosperity. I think that well summarizes the relationship and how it should exist between the European Union and the United States. One of the issues that often comes up when I meet with various representatives is the issue of economic prosperity here in Europe. And I believe it's very important that Europe be a major participant in what I'll call the AI economy. Now, the AI economy involves a number of issues. It involves AI, obviously, but it also involves robotics. It involves multinomic scanning. It involves blockchain. It involves energy storage. There's a lot of aspects to it, all of which will be driving the economy going forward. I believe very soon, rather than saying AI economy, we can just say economy, because AI will dominate the economy. There's a very good, about 30-page document that came out of the White House, the National Economic Council last week. It was something written by a gentleman named Jacob Helberg, who was formerly with one of the tech companies in Silicon Valley and now works at State, but he worked with the White House and wrote a document. It's called Artificial Intelligence and the Great Divergence. And in that document, he compares the AI economy, this movement to AI, to the Industrial Revolution, pointing out that in the days of the Industrial Revolution, if you industrialized, you became very prosperous. If you didn't industrialize, your country's probably not a whole lot better today than it was back when the Industrial Revolution hit. So being part of the AI economy is really essential to economic growth, and we could use a partner. This is a competition between the United States and China to get to the ultimate level of intelligence in the AI community. We're soon, I just saw Elon Musk today on, I probably saw him on Instagram or X, but he was commenting that he thought by the end of this year we would have AI as intelligent as a human. They would have human level intelligence, and with within a few years, we'd have AI that was as intelligent as all humanity combined. Now, these are drastic and dramatic moves, drastic and dramatic changes, but I think it's important that the West, which includes the United States and Europe and the European Union, be the first to reach those levels of intelligence. To do that, you need really 5 things. You need energy, you need critical minerals, the rare earths, you need data centers, you need data, and you need the sophisticated software that makes the AI economy work. On the energy side, I hear a lot of discussion in Europe about energy, and I hear a lot of talk about sustainable energy and renewable energy. And I think all of that is great, but I think that discussion, whether or not you can have these renewable energy sources that are going to power an industrial economy, right now they probably can't. As you know, you have to import fossil fuels. Whether they could in 5 or 6 years or 10 years, if you've got enough solar panels, enough windmills, let's say that's an open question. But to generate the energy you need, not only to reindustrialize, not only to make Volkswagens, is kind of, yesterday's argument. Today's question is, do you have enough energy to reindustrialize and to power an AI economy? Because these data centers require a tremendous amount of electricity. So we need to talk very seriously about energy policy. The United States has committed in the Framework Agreement on Trade to provide $750 billion in energy to Europe, and the EU has agreed to purchase that. And I think you're probably going to need more energy than that to be active participants in this AI phase of the economy. Beyond that, we need critical minerals. The critical minerals, there's a conference, as you probably all know, coming up on February 4th in Washington, D.C., where the EU will be represented. We're very hopeful that we're going to come up with agreements so that we can, I guess, ring fence the production of these rare earth minerals so that we can't be held hostage to any one group controlling these minerals, and I'm hoping that those negotiations will go forward, just like I'm hoping the trade agreement negotiations will go forward. We need to cut an agreement with the European Union and then with certain member states. And the EU has asked that we not complete the agreements with the member states until we get an agreement with the EU, so obviously we're anxious to see that happen, and hopefully we'll see some progress on that in Washington, D.C. next week. The next 3 things you need are data centers, which are very expensive, $30 billion a piece to build them, data, and the sophisticated software. And the companies that can provide those, that want to build the data centers, which are very expensive, as I said, and really require a lot of capital investment, and that will collect the data and that have the sophisticated software, are very anxious to do business in Europe. In fact, they're doing business in Europe now. There's 7 or 8 very large American companies that are engaging in this business in Europe and would like to grow further. We've got 3,500 to 4,000 data centers in the United States. Don't hold me to the number. That's pretty close to what it is. In Europe, in the European Union, you've got about 1,200. You need more data centers. You need more data. You need to get that software here. And I have meetings in my at the embassy, with many companies and with many of you, but with many companies, and these tech companies come in and they say, Andy, we'd really love to grow in Europe. This is an incredible market. We love the people. We really would like to grow here. But every time we turn around, it seems there's another regulation, or the goalpost has been moved, or we're hit with a $100 million fine, which makes it very difficult to grow in Europe. And so that's something I think we need to address, not that you need to eliminate the legislation you have, the Digital Services Act, the Digital Marketing Act, but hopefully we can find ways to amend that legislation so that these tech companies can grow here more facilely. There was actually in Politico today, and I know not everybody is happy with Politico today, but I know our friend from Slovakia was not particularly happy. But this was the the CEO of the Dutch chips giant ASML, which is the largest tech company that you have here in Europe. And his comment was that companies need to grow, and if they're going to grow, they can't be constantly annoyed by these onerous regulations, and that making things simple is good, but you can't make things very complicated and then simplify them a little and then be proud of it. Now, those aren't my words, those are basically his words. But I think the point is well made. I know Europe is engaged and has been since Professor Draghi's report in simplifying the regulatory framework. I think that's essential if you're going to have the energy to participate in an AI economy, if you're going to have the companies that you need to work with to bring the resources to Europe to have an AI economy. And I will tell you that there are long-term benefits to AI, as we've discussed, but there's also shorter-term benefits. It's much like when the railroads went in the United States, or when the auto industry grew in the United States. You first had this massive capital investment, which drives economic growth, and then you get the benefits of what went into those capital investments for many, many years. In the U.S. now, we're in that stage of capital investment. And I'm sure you've all are familiar with the fact that our economy is basically a consumer-driven economy. The United States economic growth, GDP, grows based upon consumer purchases, basically, consumer activity. Over the last 3 quarters, when we've had GDP growth of 3.8%, 4.3%, and they're projecting 5.4% for the 4th quarter, the investment, the capital investment in AI has equaled consumer spending. So it has driven a very significant portion of that economic growth. And that's something that can happen here in Europe as well if we have a friendlier atmosphere in that respect. And as I said, this is important to the United States. I'm not here I'm not here to make arguments for what Europe should or shouldn't do. But I think it's to the benefit of the United States as well, because, as I said, a strong economic Europe is a stronger trade partner, better able to defend itself, and better able to help us in troubled spots across the globe where we're dealing with bad actors. So we very much want to partner with Europe. We're looking forward to the opportunity to do so. I think that cutting back on the regulatory maze will be very helpful in that respect. And I certainly hope that we can come to agreements on the trade agreement. You know, we have complied with what we said we would do on the trade agreement. We'd like Europe to now go through its process and then comply with what it agreed to do. And we'd like to get a critical minerals agreement where we can work together to try and make sure that we have what we need to participate in future economic growth. Again, it really is my privilege to be here. I've enjoyed meeting with so many of you and creating really friendships. I've been here 4.5 months. I feel like I've been here 4.5 years. I know with the relationships that we've already developed, people have been great. We don't always agree, but I found that everybody is always willing to talk and willing to work things through. I appreciate that, and I look forward to answering whatever questions you have. Is that about 10, 15 minutes, or you want me to keep going here?
Excellent, 14 and a half.
14 and a half, well, that's not too bad. All right, thank you very much. As I said, I appreciate being here, and I look forward to your questions.